The morning sky was heavy with smoke and dust. The ground was dark with the marks of many battles. The air was filled with the sound of armor and horses waiting for the command to move. The soldiers stood in long lines, silent, with their swords and shields ready. They did not shout, they did not move. They only watched the field and waited for what was about to happen. In the middle of all this silence, Queen Alara walked forward. She wore shining armor with gold edges and a crown that caught the pale light of dawn. Every step she took was strong and firm, and her soldiers lowered their eyes as she passed. She was known for her power, her wisdom, and her will that never bent. Many feared her, and many followed her with loyal hearts. She had fought wars before, but this day was different. On the other side of the field stood a single knight, who had become the center of every story. His name was Daniel. He had fought with great skill, and even the strongest men had fallen before his blade. He was not from a royal house, nor did he carry a banner of nobility. Still, he stood tall like one who was born to lead. He had not bowed, he had not begged, and he had not broken even when surrounded. The queen looked at him with eyes that showed no fear. She could not ignore this man. He was not like the others she had faced. There was something in the way he stood, something in the way he carried himself, that caught her attention. His armor was plain, marked with scars of battle, but the strength within him seemed greater than the steel he wore. The two armies waited. Every soldier's eyes moved between the queen and the knight. The sound of wind across the field was the only thing that touched the silence. Then the queen raised her hand. Her voice rang clear, sharp and steady. "Remove your helmet," she commanded. The sound carried across the field like a blade through the air. Her soldiers shifted, watching closely. The knight did not move at once. His hands rested on the hilt of his sword. His body was steady, his breath calm, but there was a pause. The queen's command was not a request. It was an order from the highest seat of power. Still, he hesitated. Daniel looked at her with eyes hidden behind steel. For a moment, it seemed he would resist. But then, slowly, his hands rose to the helmet. The metal scraped as his fingers touched the sides and began to lift it. Every soldier leaned forward, hearts beating faster, waiting for the face behind the steel. The queen did not blink. She wanted to see the man who had fought with such courage. She wanted to know if he was like the others, hardened and cruel, or if there was something else hidden beneath. The helmet moved, inch by inch, until the knight pulled it free. He lowered it slowly and held it by his side. The air grew colder in that instant, as if the whole field had taken a deep breath. The queen's eyes widened. She expected scars, a face twisted by anger, a man who looked like the many warriors she had defeated before, but what she saw shocked her. His face was calm, his eyes steady, and his expression carried no fear. He looked young yet strong, worn by hardship but not broken. He was human in the purest sense of the word. For the first time in years, the queen felt her heart move in a way she could not explain. She had seen many men fall, had seen countless faces of war, but never one like this. She stood still, the weight of her crown pressing heavier on her head as her soldiers waited for her next word. Daniel did not speak. He only looked back at her with quiet strength, as if telling her without words that he was not afraid, that his spirit was his own, and that no crown could command what lay within him. The battlefield was silent. The queen had asked for his face, and he had given it. Yet what she received was far more than she had ever expected. The queen stood still, her eyes locked on the man before her. The battlefield was filled with silence. Every soldier on both sides waited for her next move, but even she was not certain what that move should be. She had seen his face, and it had unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. The knight named Daniel was not like the men she had faced before. There was something in his eyes, a calm strength that seemed to reach beyond the clash of swords and the roar of war. She expected him to bow, to tremble, to ask for mercy, but he did none of these things. Instead, he stood tall and looked at her with steady eyes. His face carried no anger, no fear, and no pride, only the quiet power of someone who believed in something greater than himself. This puzzled her, for she had ruled with fear and command, and most men gave in when faced with her. Yet this man did not. Her voice was steady when she spoke again. She asked him why he had fought so fiercely, why he had stood against her armies without breaking. Her tone was not filled with rage, but with curiosity she did not fully understand. She wanted to know what gave this man his strength. Daniel's voice was calm when he answered. He told her that he did not fight for glory or for a crown. He fought for his people, for the villages and families who had no armor to protect them, no sword to defend them. He said that freedom was worth more than life itself, and that he would stand as long as he could to guard it. His words carried across the field, strong and clear, so that even the soldiers could hear them. The queen felt a strange weight in her chest as she listened. His words did not sound like empty talk. They came from his heart, and everyone who heard them could feel the truth. She remembered the many battles she had led, the countless men who had fallen, and the endless crowns of victory that had only made her throne colder. She had forgotten what it meant to fight for something beyond power. Her soldiers looked at her, waiting for her order to strike him down, but she hesitated. She did not lower her blade, yet she did not raise it either. She studied his face again, looking for weakness. But all she found was human strength, the kind that no weapon could shatter. Daniel did not try to plead for his life. He did not lower his gaze. He stood firm, even without his helmet, and faced the queen as though they were equals. His courage was quiet, but it was the kind that could shake an entire kingdom. The soldiers whispered among themselves. Some of them felt the truth in his words, though they dared not say it aloud. Others only waited for the queen to act, unsure of what she would decide. The air was heavy with the weight of choice. Dumb. The queen felt her crown pressing on her head more heavily than ever before. For the first time, she wondered if she had lost sight of what it meant to be a leader. Power had always been her shield, but Daniel's humanity pierced through it in a way no sword ever could. She finally lowered her arm, though she did not speak. The silence grew deeper, as if the whole world was waiting for her to say something. Daniel remained calm, his hand resting lightly on his sword, though he made no move to use it. Her eyes stayed on him, searching, questioning, almost pleading for an answer she did not know how to ask. She saw a man who had nothing to hide, nothing to fear, and it unsettled her more than all the battles she had ever fought. The moment stretched on, and though no blood was spilled, the tension was heavier than steel. Both armies waited. And in the middle of that field, between the queen with her crown and the knight with his bare face, a story greater than war was beginning to unfold. The sun rose higher above the field, casting long shadows across the soldiers who still stood waiting. The silence was not broken, for no one dared to move without the queen's command. Her sword hung at her side, but she did not lift it. Her eyes remained fixed on Daniel, the knight who had stood so firm before her. Her heart was restless, though she did not show it. For years she had been known as a ruler who never bent, who never allowed doubt to touch her. But now, doubt had entered her like a seed planted deep within. She tried to push it away, yet the calm face of the man before her brought it back stronger each time. Daniel's words echoed in her mind. He fought not for a crown, not for power, but for the people who had no strength of their own. It was simple, yet powerful, and it shook her. She thought of the families in her kingdom, of the children who grew up under her rule. She had believed that order and strength kept them safe, but now she wondered if she had ruled only through fear. The soldiers behind her began to murmur softly. They were trained to obey, but they too had heard Daniel's words. Some of them began to look at him not as an enemy, but as someone who spoke a truth they had forgotten. The queen tightened her grip on her sword, not because she wished to strike, but because she felt her control slipping. She had always believed her crown gave her strength, but in this moment, the crown felt heavy, as though it chained her down instead of lifting her above others. Daniel stood without fear. He had removed his helmet, and his face was open for all to see. He showed no shame, no fear of death, no begging for mercy. He stood as if nothing could move him, and this quiet strength spread across the field like a wave. At last the queen spoke again. Her voice was lower, less sharp than before. She asked him if he understood what it meant to stand against a crown. She told him that to defy a ruler was to risk death, not only for himself, but for all those who followed him. Daniel answered without hesitation. He said that he understood, but he also believed that true strength came not from crowns or thrones, but from hearts that were willing to protect what was right. He said that fear may force men to obey, but love and hope gave them the courage to fight for something greater. His words struck her like arrows. She had led through command, through fear of her power, but never had she thought of leading through hope. For a moment she wondered what kind of kingdom could be built on such a belief. She looked at her soldiers again, and she saw something new in their eyes. They were no longer waiting only for her orders. They were waiting to see what kind of queen she would choose to be. The air grew heavier with the weight of choice. The queen felt the eyes of thousands upon her. She could end it all with one swing of her sword. She could strike Daniel down and silence the whispers that had begun to grow. But if she did, she feared she would also kill something within herself that had just awakened. Daniel did not move, and he did not speak again. He had said what he believed, and he trusted that his truth was enough. The queen felt her breath grow slow, as if even her body was caught between the path of power and the path of change. The field remained quiet. The birds had stopped singing, the wind seemed to hold its breath, and even the horses stood still as if they too waited for what would come. The queen lowered her gaze for a moment, something she had not done in years, and then looked back into the steady eyes of Daniel. In that gaze, she saw not only a man, but also a mirror that showed her what she could be if she chose a different path. And though she had not spoken the words yet, she knew that the next choice she made would change more than the fate of one man. It would change the fate of her kingdom forever. The soldiers on both sides stood in silence, their armor shining under the rising sun. The queen and Daniel faced each other in the middle of the field, and every eye was fixed on them. No one dared to break the silence, for it was clear that something greater than swords and shields was unfolding. The queen had lowered her blade but had not spoken. Her thoughts raced as she looked into Daniel's steady eyes. For the first time, she felt that her crown and her power were not enough. She had always believed that fear and command gave her strength, but Daniel's calm presence proved her wrong. His words still echoed in her mind, words about freedom, about hope, about protecting those who could not protect themselves. Her soldiers began to whisper again. They had never seen her hesitate before. To them, she had always been unshakable, a ruler whose will was as strong as iron. But now she stood still, caught between the weight of her crown and the truth spoken by a single knight. The whispers grew louder, though none dared to step forward. Daniel waited patiently. His hands did not grip his sword tightly, and his stance was not one of attack. He stood tall, but peaceful, as if he trusted that his truth was stronger than any weapon. His calmness spread through the field, and even some of the queen's men began to feel their hearts stir in ways they did not understand. At last the queen asked him why he was not afraid. She reminded him that he stood alone before her and her entire army. She told him that with one command, his life could end, and no one would speak his name again. Daniel's reply was simple. He said that fear might take his life, but it could not take his soul. He said that if he fell, others would rise, because hope was stronger than fear, and truth could never be buried forever. His voice was calm, but it carried across the field like thunder. The queen felt her chest tighten. She had ruled with power and command for so long, but this man spoke of a strength that came from within, a strength she had almost forgotten. She looked again at her soldiers, and she saw the change in their eyes. Some of them no longer looked only at her for orders. They looked at Daniel as if his courage had awakened something in them that had slept for years. For the first time in her reign, the queen felt uncertain. If she killed him, she could silence his voice, but she feared his words would live on in the hearts of her people. If she spared him, she risked appearing weak, but she also saw the chance of something new. The weight of choice pressed down on her harder than the heaviest armor. The air was tense, thick with unspoken questions. The soldiers shifted uneasily, waiting for the command that would end the stillness. Some wanted blood, others wanted peace, but all of them knew that whatever happened next would change the fate of the kingdom. Daniel did not push her, and he did not beg. He simply stood, his eyes steady and his heart clear. The queen could see that he was ready to accept whatever choice she made, and that calm strength unsettled her more than any blade could. Slowly, the queen lowered her sword to her side. A wave of surprise moved through the field. No one had expected her to stay her hand. The whispers grew louder, but she ignored them. She could not explain it fully, even to herself, but she knew that striking him down would not give her victory.
Ow.
it would only leave her empty. Daniel bowed his head slightly, not as a sign of defeat, but as a sign of respect. The queen felt a strange warmth stir in her chest, something she had not felt in years. She wondered if it was hope, or perhaps the first sign of change. The field remained quiet, but it was no longer the silence of fear. It was the silence of waiting, the silence of hearts that longed to know what would happen next. The queen's choice was not yet clear to the world, but everyone sensed that the course of the kingdom had already begun to shift. The queen stood in the center of the field, her soldiers waiting for her command. The sword at her side gleamed faintly in the sunlight, but her hand no longer clutched it tightly. Across from her, Daniel stood steady, his helmet still in his hand, his calm face uncovered for all to see. His words had already spread through the hearts of those who listened, and now the entire army seemed caught between fear and hope. She could have ended his life in an instant. One word, one gesture, and it would all be over. Yet something inside her refused. For the first time, she understood that victory was not always about defeating the body before you. Sometimes victory was about facing the truth within yourself. Daniel had reminded her of that truth, and it echoed louder than any trumpet of war. Her soldiers shifted uneasily, their armor clinking softly, looked at her, waiting for the familiar order to strike, but she did not give it. She looked instead at Daniel, her thoughts heavy with memories of battles fought, of kingdoms taken, of thrones won, and of countless faces lost to her command. What had all of it brought her? A crown? Yes. Power? Yes. But also loneliness, emptiness, and a heart hardened by fear. Daniel's voice broke the silence. He told her that she had the power to change everything. He said that one command could destroy him, but another command could save not only him, but also her people. He spoke gently, not as a man who wished to shame her, but as someone who believed she could be greater than she had been. His words were not loud, yet they reached every ear, and the men on both sides held their breath. The queen closed her eyes for a moment. She thought of her people not as soldiers or subjects, but as mothers, fathers, children, and farmers who lived simple lives. She thought of the many who had suffered for her ambition, and she felt the weight of it press against her soul. When she opened her eyes again, they no longer burned with pride, but carried a softness no one had seen in years. Slowly she raised her hand. Every soldier stiffened, waiting for the strike, but her voice came gentle and firm. She declared that the battle was over. No more blood would be spilled that day. The field erupted in gasps, for no one had expected such words from her. Her army looked at one another in confusion. Some lowered their weapons, others hesitated, but none dared to disobey her command. On the other side, Daniel's men also stood frozen, not sure if this was a trick or a true act of mercy. Daniel himself did not smile or boast. He only bowed his head, showing respect for the choice she had made. His calm acceptance made the moment even more powerful. The queen felt her heart stir with something she had not known in a long time. Peace. She turned to her men and told them that power did not only come from fear. She said that strength was not found in crowns or swords, but in the hearts of those who stood together for what was right. Her words spread through the ranks, and though many did not fully understand, they felt the truth in her voice. For the first time, her soldiers saw her not as a distant ruler, but as a leader who carried the same weight they did. Some of them even felt a spark of pride, not in conquest, but in the hope that perhaps their kingdom could become something greater. Daniel stepped closer, stopping only a few paces away. His voice was quiet as he thanked her. He said that her choice would not be forgotten, that it would echo through the land, not as a tale of war, but as a story of change. The queen nodded, her eyes still locked on his. She knew that this night had given her something no crown ever had the courage to see herself clearly. The battlefield remained silent, but it was no longer the silence of fear. It was the silence of new beginnings, the silence of hearts waiting to believe in something greater. The queen lowered her sword fully and let it rest at her side. Daniel stood with the same calm strength he had shown from the start. In that moment, the war ended, not with the clash of steel, but with the quiet power of truth. And long after the dust of that day settled, people would remember not the battles fought, but the moment when the queen commanded, "Remove your helmet," and discovered that the greatest strength was not power over others, but the humanity that united them all.